Following an incredible Ashes series this summer, England are touring India early next year for a 5-match test series. Watching cricket in India is a bucket list experience for any cricket fan, and the country is a magical place to visit. The first test is in Hyderabad, which is the ideal gateway to discovering India, and the final test is in the stunning city of Dharamshala in the foothills of the Himalayas. If you're curious about combining the cricket with some of the very best that India has to offer, Experience Travel Group are the experts in tailor-made holidays to Asia. With tickets secured, rooms in the best boutique hotels, and an unmatched network of local guides to look after you at the cricket and beyond, a dream holiday is waiting for you. To build your perfect adventure, go to experiencetravelgroup.com and click Get in Touch, or call them directly on 0203 993 5153. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly Podcast. We're a week into the World Cup and we've got a couple of potentially huge tournament-defining games coming up in the next few days. We'll talk about everything World Cup related, as well as looking at some of the other news around the World Game in the last week or so. I'm Yas Rana, and with me today is Jo Harman and Phil Walker. Mark Butcher will be joining us later in the show, and there will be a review of India-Afghanistan at the end of the episode with Abhishek Mukherjee. Jo, you weren't on yesterday's daily off the England-Bangladesh game. Are you slightly more optimistic about England's chances after that resounding win?
Well, I don't think I was hugely pessimistic.
Okay.
Was I? I think I that was a poor performance, but I didn't think their kind of World Cup hopes were in tatters. Yesterday was pretty much what I expected, really. Obviously, a hugely commanding performance with the bat. Went out like a train, as you expected them to, after a slightly sort of in and out batting performance against New Zealand. And encouraging signs with the ball. It definitely did look. I know their selection will to an extent be determined by conditions and pitches, but that looks such a better balanced side to me, with another frontline seamer in Reece Topley, who had obviously bowled brilliantly, rather than having sort of too many all-rounders. So I mean, Bangladesh, probably a good match for England to have. There was plenty of freebies on offer. Very professional performance, which I don't want to say it gets their World Cup back on track, because I don't think it was massively off track, and I don't think they're now charging towards the semi-finals. I think they're looking good. They're a good side, looking good. And Afghanistan next. They should have 2 wins from 3, and then some tight matches later on in the group stage to see if they can sneak through to the semi-finals.
Yeah, I mean, we talked on yesterday's show about the weird passage of play towards the end. It wasn't just a passage, it was about 2.5 hours long, where the result was completely locked in. England were clearly going to win that by miles, and then Bangladesh were basically playing for net run rate, which actually gave Adil Rashid and Mark Wood a really long bowl, which I thought was actually quite important. Wood I was less sure about, because I almost feel he's got a set number of overs he's going to bowl over the World Cup. Why use him in a game that's already done? But I thought Rashid in particular looked to be bowling really well towards the end of that spell. Phil, are you more optimistic about England's World Cup chances after yesterday?
I mean, I did a double header on the podcast yesterday, didn't I?
Yeah.
But I guess this is modern content, right? I'll just say what I said yesterday.
Unless you change your mind, that's modern content.
And also,
you could have a completely different opinion that you had yesterday.
I flip-flopped dramatically across the whole of this build-up to the tournament, and in the first few days as well.
We set up a split screen. You could argue with yourself on the same podcast.
Yeah. What I wrote in the magazine bears very little resemblance to what I've said
that was ages ago.
In the weeks hence. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think there's areas where they're not suited particularly well. I have my reservations about the completeness of the bowling attack and the balance of the team, with Stokes not bowling. Just as we discussed it across the summer in other formats, the same sort of thing applies. I'd be interested in how you stand on that, Joe. Right? So say Stokes pulls up fine today. He had a long net yesterday, apparently. Pulls up fine, says, right, I'm fully ready to go. I can play as a batter. So you assume that he comes right back into the side. If it is a flattish track, not a kind of ragging turner, but a flattish conventional Indian track, and you're playing against a good side, who do you leave out in favour of Stokes?
I'd leave Brook out. I'd just do a straight swap. I don't think you can afford to take an all-rounder out. I think you need those overs. And Brooks shown a bit so far, a couple of cameos, but he's not said you can't drop me in the way that Milan clearly did yesterday with a brilliant knock, his latest brilliant knock.
I guess the only, I mean, obviously Milan's a stick on. I guess the only option would be one of the 2 or 3 all-rounders, i.e. Moeen or Livingston or Curran, and obviously Brook, as you say.
Well, I'm saying Moeen I wouldn't have on the side anyway because I think Topley has to stay in. So then you're saying, does Stokes come in for one of Livingston or Curran? And I think you need both of them in there. So I think Brook's the player to miss out.
So Curran's an interesting story. Up to now, he's bowled, I think, 13 overs in the competition and gone at 8s or 7.5 to 8. Picked up 1 wicket, I think. Might be 2, but I think it's 1. And isn't bowling with the new ball and isn't bowling at the death either. He's bowling in the middle overs and he doesn't really... That's not really his bag.
I think he'll bowl at the death in games. So I think he bowled at the very end of the game yesterday. He's not going to bowl the new ball with Wokes and Topper in the side. And he's not... I don't think he's particularly suited to bowling the middle overs of a 50-over game where the opposition are content at going at 6 to 7 and over rather than 9 to 10 as they would at the same phase in the T20 game. But I think you can just about accommodate that if you've got if you back the spin of Livingston. That if you've got 40 overs from Wokes, Wood, Topley and Rashid, you're not actually after that much from Sam Curran with the ball if you mix that with the spin of Livingston, which actually I think is record in ODI cricket with the ball is really good actually. And I know Livingston, and I know that's partly because he only gets brought on often when it's turning or when particular matchups suit him. But I think that he can potentially bowl more than he has done in the past. And actually on what you were saying about not having Moeen, I'm not that worried about that with Livingston. I don't think Livingston's bowling is that much worse than Moeen, and actually it's more flexible in that he can bowl to right-handers and left-handers because he spins it both ways. And
I think we could get to a point later in the tournament if Livingston does bowl his overs and bowls well, the front line four are going well, it might get to a point where Curran isn't bowling enough overs for him to warrant his place inside, and then maybe you say, look, we'll pack the batting and bring Brook in for him. But I don't think we're there quite yet. I think that's too risky in terms of bowling options to bring in a batter for an all-rounder.
Fair enough. My instinct remains to pack the batting. I think England are going to win this tournament by getting one more run than the next, i.e. if they give up 330, they'll still back themselves because they're a batting team and they're a batting heavy team. If Brook had made, a 60 odd yesterday, Joe, if he had made a 60 odd, he'd have made it in about 40 balls. Would that muddy the waters for you, or would you still be completely in there with him?
I mean, it's hard to say. It might have done. It shouldn't have done, really, because coming in at that point against that attack, I don't think really should sway the argument either way, particularly. But that being said, if I'd seen Harry Brook smack 3 6s and over yesterday, then I might have a different view.
Yeah.
My view is I don't think it needs to be too complicated, and I don't think there's necessarily a bad call to make. We're still so early in this tournament that I think Brook will still clearly have matches to play when Stokes is fit. They will rotate. Even if Stokes is fit, I don't think he's going to play every game or anything like it until the end of the tournament. So I think it will kind of figure itself out. But at the moment, I would lean towards having that extra all-rounder.
Yeah. My one overriding concern is that Livingston is high at 6 and Curran is high at 7. Livingston's made a runnable 20-odd and played a very poor shot in the midst of lots of other bad shots against New Zealand. They got a first ball that admittedly is a really good ball. From the left-arm seamer whose name escapes me.
Mustafa Zur.
Thank you. No, it wasn't him.
It wasn't Shoriful.
It was Shoriful,
yeah.
Nonetheless, he's obviously a very dangerous player, but he is unquestionably high at 6, and Curran doesn't have really the weight of runs to justify, to bring about much faith at 7. Now, they may well get away with it, but I'm just a bit... That's my fear. That's my fear in the back of my mind, and the equation simply is Brooks' power as an unproven 50-over batter, but with all that infinite potential, is that more or less valuable than cobbling together a few overs with a second or third spinner who offers threat with the bat, but will deliver less regularly than Brook? And that to me is the equation. I can totally understand why the conventional and probably on balance right view at the minute is in this tournament that you lean towards keeping the better balanced setup. But I just have this fear for England that, you know, a good new ball attack, they nick a couple off, and suddenly you're in a pickle. And you saw that against New Zealand, albeit that was a question of execution as well as all the other things.
I have that fear with both disciplines, though. I think they're short in both departments compared to the very best sides. I think with Livingston, he had that really good series against New Zealand just gone, where he performed well in a variety of scenarios.
A couple of tricky scenarios which we hadn't really seen
before
from him in ODI cricket.
And I do just rate his bowling pretty highly. I think there'll be games on pitches that turn where he will be really important.
And I can see that. I agree with that.
And
you want him coming in at 5 down, not 4 down, don't you?
Yeah.
But I don't think England can get to that point yet and feel comfortable in the bowling options.
And I think the other thing on your suggestion is that I think there will be a point in the tournament where that is more viable. But at the moment, with the way Wokes in particular is bowling, like he's not the 10 over banker that he should be. He will be that in a game or two's time. But I think at the moment, that's probably the way I go. And also with the fixtures England they have games, Afghanistan, and they got Sri Lanka soon. These are games that I think they should back their top 6 to get the runs. And sort of, you know, Sri Lanka, we've seen them bat really well. I think you'd probably go bowling heavy against a side like Sri Lanka. We're a week or so into the tournament. Who's caught your attention so far? Joe, what's been the innings that's caught your eye most of all?
I really enjoyed watching Ravindra against England, but the innings that stood out for me was Kushal Mendis yesterday for Sri Lanka against Pakistan. Stunning knocks. I mean, he's always been such a good player to watch, but I've not seen him bat with the kind of power that he has in their first 2 games. So he got 76 from 42 with 8 sixes against South Africa, 122 from just 77 balls yesterday against Pakistan, 6 sixes. That's a strike rate of 166 for the tournament, which is more than double his career strike rate. And I maybe I've missed something over the last couple of years, but I haven't really seen him play like that. Obviously, he's been on the losing side on both occasions as well, which seems deeply unfair when you've batted like that. And Sri Lanka are clearly struggling without their best 2 bowlers there. But yeah, he's always been a joy to watch and played standout knocks. There was, you know, famously the test innings against Australia in 2016.
Yeah,
Paddy, you know, one of the great test hundreds of the 21st century, really. So he's always shown that talent, but this is a new aspect to him that I've not really seen, and it's been a lot of fun to watch.
He's 28 years old. I spoke about him yesterday with Ben. I just want to add, come and play county cricket. Right, think about it. Come and play county cricket. For some reason, his stock as an international cricketer is relatively low. You know, you don't see him in the sparkly, glittery stuff that often. He loves red ball cricket. He's always available for red ball cricket. Come and play for a county. Come and play all 3 formats for a county for the next 7 or 8 years, and obviously play for Sri Lanka whenever you possibly can. That takes precedence. But come and play county cricket. Come and play for one of the big counties and become a county legend. He seems like the perfect kind of cricketer at that point in his career to get probably more fulfillment than he's had up until now. Because, as I was saying to Ben yesterday, it's his fate to have been left as the best of the new breed post Sangha and Mahela. And if he'd been born a few years earlier, he'd have been able to have bedded himself in alongside them, and they could have taken the brunt of it, and then he could have just developed. But as it was, he made that 100 you mentioned when he was 20, 21 maybe, and he's had to basically bear the brunt of this transition ever since. You know, that's quite a tough gig for a young lad, and deserves a bit more from his career, really, because he's a marvellously talented player.
Absolutely. I mean, him and Aidan Markram, whenever they do well, I'm actually a little bit annoyed. So yesterday when I was watching that and I looked up his numbers, he's made 114 ODIs and that was his 300. How are you that good and had such little success up until this point? But yeah, that was absolutely amazing. I mean, Phil, what your knock of the tournament was the one that sort of lit the tournament up?
Yeah, Ravindra. It's just spectacular, wasn't it? Really. Again, I spoke about it a few days ago. It's one of those innings that really stays with you, though. The shots in particular stay with you. There was something magical about that knock, and also Milan's knock as well. Two kind of similar sorts of styles as well. Classical left-handedness combined with modern-day ferocity, if you like. And there was real panache in what Ravindra did. And it was an announcement innings, as you say. It was a statement innings, came from nowhere. He wasn't even certainly wasn't in many people's 11s, wasn't in many people's 15s. Crept in there on the back of some decent mini cameos out in England in the build-up, and then bats 3 and plays out of his skin. Marvellous. Then followed it up with another 70, I think it was, or 50. No, 50.
Runnable 50, yeah.
And suddenly, he's in the mix to be one of the top run scorers in the tournament. And that's what World Cups do. They still pluck these names from nowhere. Another good knock, actually, was Shafiq's yesterday. Abdullah Shafiq, who came in for Zaka Zaman. Big call. Zaman's been their mainstay up top for 4 or 5 years. Comes in for his World Cup berth, if you like, and just strums a stunner. 109 balls for 119 or whatever it was, something like that. And again, complete control of the situation, just as you saw with Ravindra. And as I say, just a word from Milan as well. That was a really important knock for him personally, and a brilliant knock aesthetically as well.
It was an important day yesterday for Reece Topley as well, Joe. He was your spell that you wanted to pick out. And I was saying yesterday that he's a almost forgotten man of English white ball cricket in particular. He was identified at a young age. This is
8 years ago,
really
he made
good.
his ODI debut.
And when he does play, he has done really well. And now he gets into England's best 11, and he potentially could be huge for England this tournament.
Yeah, I was just looking at his record because it's been so spread out. I wasn't actually sure what it would look like. But 42 wickets in 27 ODIs, economy of just over 5, bowling predominantly in the power play. It's a really good record. And we saw yesterday, I think we were probably all a bit surprised that he didn't play against New Zealand. I think that was more to do with conditions and opposition than anything against him. And we knew he'd play against Bangladesh, who probably didn't appreciate the extra bit of pace and extra bounce. And he absolutely delivered 2 wickets in 2 balls in his first over. And then an absolute peach to clean up Shakib, getting late swing, bounce. You might not see a better ball than that for the rest of the tournament. And actually, when I see him bowling like that, getting that late movement, I'm like, there's definitely a good test bowler in there as well. Left arm quick. I mean, it's probably in his interest not to bother with that because he's had horrendous injury problems and he's a very good white ball bowler. But there is in the back of your mind thinking left arm quick, he'd do a good job.
If ever someone deserves it, it's him, because he was in that T20 squad as well, wasn't he? Had to pull out just at the death.
Stood on the boundary sponge, didn't he? Yeah. He basically he's done some good interviews that I've read over the years about, basically pretty much retiring, never wanting to play cricket again, completely fed up with the sport. So yeah, it is an amazing story. And yeah, like you say, he's going to have a big part to play in this tournament. I think Butch said at the start he was a sort of outside bet to be leading wicket taker. The only reason Butch didn't pick him was because he didn't think he'd play all the games, but he's going to be right up there for England.
Phil, the passage of the tournament so far was probably when Australia got India 2 for 3 in that run chase. That was just a spectacular bit of cricket. Obviously, we were bemoaning the lack of close finishes yesterday before the first close finish happened. But that was absolutely brilliant. And Hazelwood was a star.
Yeah, as you say, 2 for Hazelwood, 1 for Stark, 2 for 3 under lights. That was the moment when the tournament really caught fire. And I mean, first of all, they are a great, all-time great new ball attack in white ball cricket. Hazelwood is forgotten about as one of the best white ball bowlers around the world, but he's absolutely in that category. And hits Sharma on the back pad, climb in front.
85 mile per hour off break, basically.
Yeah, obscene, really. Perhaps the ball of the tournament, certainly up there. Although Topley's one against Shakib certainly challenges it. And then Ishan Kishan goes as well. Shreyas Iyer, he goes to Stark. Shreyas Iyer chips one up to short cover, and suddenly 3 down. And if you're talking about significant knocks as well up until now, coming up to a week in, Kohli's 85. Now, it did feature one of the all-time great drops by Mitchell Marsh at square leg. So there's always going to be that slight asterisk next to it. Nonetheless, under pressure, it's been built as Kohli's tournament. And the 85 he makes, I think 97 perhaps, that Rahul makes as well. Very significant partnership, because in a way, India would rather have won the game like that than cruise to it, having put on 100 odd for the first wicket, because they were under real pressure there. And you imagine the dial would have swung very strongly in Australia's favour at that point. So to ride your luck for the first half hour and then blossom and play that kind of partnership, 150 odd they put on together. Ominous.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's our job, but I find it fascinating how narratives are retrospectively put on innings, depending on like 50-50 moments that could go either way. Kohli gets dropped on when the score's 20 for 3, I think, but he also played a miss at about 5 before that. And actually comparing the innings, sorry, I was just say that Rahul's innings was amazing because not only was he chanceless, it was his takedown of Zampa that sort of blunted Australia's most potent middle overs weapon. And it was actually once that happened, the game felt quite safe from an Indian perspective. But everyone at the end of the game was saying Kohli's World Cup. Kohli had never got a 50 in a successful run chase in the World Cup before that as well.
What the
king of the chase?
King of the chase.
King of the chase. He never got a 50 in a successful run chase.
Honorary mention as well to Baz the leader. If you're talking about spells, he took 4th on the second day against Pakistan.
Yeah,
hit 50 as well, didn't he?
Hit 50 in the game as well. Yeah, but he went bang bang in the same over, having got rid of I think Rizwan as well. He took 4 there and was on a hat trick at one point. Kept them very much in the game, and they were in the game as well in the run chase as well. 100 odd for 1, 120 for 2, fell away in the end. But yeah, good cricketer, good resourceful cricketer. It's been fun, I'm genuine about that.
Yeah,
it's been fun up until now.
We need a result to go against the head, don't we? We had, I suppose, New Zealand minor possible shot, but not really. I'd say that was more or less a 50-50 game. Every other game has gone the way that you'd have expected it to, if not necessarily the way the match flowed, the end result. We're just looking for 1 or 2 shocks in there to give it a little bit more oomph, I think.
Yeah, I think we are getting to the point where there are games. So yesterday's game was one of those, I think, where once Sri Lanka got 340, whatever happened was going to be really interesting. And I think we're getting to the point now where there'll be more and more games where sort of whatever the result is, whatever happens, that will have a big impact on the tournament one way or another. But you're right, we need more games where I guess one of the bottom 4 teams upsets one of the top 6 teams. On the world's biggest stage, there's no hiding place. To some, it is a blur. To others, everything comes into sharp focus. This is the time to seize the moment, paying attention to every detail. What looks effortless is actually born out of diligence, both in sport and in life. This is the time to step up to the plate. Cometh the hour, cometh the man. Congratulations to Mohammad Rizwan, who has won this week's Charles Tyrwhitt Cometh the Hour moment of the week for his unbeaten 131 to see Pakistan home yesterday in their record World Cup run chase against Sri Lanka. Phil, you mentioned the Abdullah Shafiq knock, but Rizwan was sensational himself, and again, that was the first close finish in the tournament. And Pakistan stuttered a bit against Netherlands, really needed that win against Sri Lanka before the big one against India on Saturday.
That would have been the result against the head that you're talking about. That would have been really useful, I think, to keep the tournament open. As it is now, it looks like Sri Lanka are kind of done for the final 4. And so already now you have Netherlands, Sri Lanka, and likelihood Afghanistan here, who are playing India as we speak, will have all been 0-2. So then it becomes almost impossible from there, really. So then you have a 10-team tournament reduced to 7, and then you have Bangladesh as well, who have won 1, lost 1. But you fear that they might get dragged into that pool as well, and suddenly you have 40% of the teams 1 week in of a 6-week tournament who can't win the thing.
But we're still having fun.
Oh yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. That's how it is. And you know the best teams are the best teams. So be it. One thing that we can say for sure is that of that 6, it's anyone's, right? At this point, you'd say India, understandably, are favourites, but it's anyone's. In the game tomorrow, Australia, South Africa, I think that's perhaps the game I'm the most interested in up to now, because that'll be a clash of 2 teams who don't have the natural components to thrive in India, playing on a mystery track, right, at Lucknow. That's been dug up, apparently, you were telling me earlier. Dug up, so we don't know what to expect.
So curator sacked, ground dug up.
Yeah,
so
all that. So there was an India-New Zealand game earlier in the year where New Zealand got 99 off their 20 overs. in the aftermath of that, or after the IPL, the curator lost his job and they completely relayed the pitch, so no one really knows what
Feels
it's going to
quite
be
a hazardous
like.
profession being a pitch curator in India.
Yeah, it does.
You don't last long.
Yeah.
Unless you do exactly what you're told.
Apart from the fella at Eden Gardens, when I was out there 2012, he was 83 years old. Mukherjee, legend.
Yeah. And he would give his own like press conference.
Didn't give a shit. Didn't give a shit.
He gave his own press conference.
And this was the tour when England beat India at Mumbai, somehow outspun them, and there was all talk about what the pitch was going to be like in Eden Gardens, and loads of build-up talk, and obviously scurrilous talk about whether Dhoni's going to be in the ground, the curator's ear, and all the rest of it, what the BCCI may or may not be thinking about it. And he literally, as you say, gave his own press conference outside his own house.
His house?
Yeah, because he'd done the pitch, then he'd walked home, and a load of the press had followed him. So he basically just gave them a declaration, and he said, I bow to no man. These are my pitches. This is my club. I bow to nobody. No one from MS Dhoni to Srinivasan is going to tell me what to do. These are my pitches. Really good cricket pitch. England won that one as well somehow.
You're saying how like it feels that maybe there are only 60% of the teams in the competition are still in it. I sort of see it as, I think India and New Zealand are particularly likely to qualify for the semi-finals at this point, which leaves 2 spots to be fought over between England, Pakistan, South Africa and Australia. So games between those 4 countries are huge. I mean, Joe, how do you see it going? I mean, Australia obviously briefly looked like they might be able to defend that score against India rather, but on current form, I sort of think their batting looks a bit light, and Carey's out of nick, Green's out of nick. Carey averages 20 in ODI cricket this year, having played quite a lot. And with the ball, I'm not sure they know exactly what they're trying to do when they would chase it. When they were defending only 200, Hazelwood and Stark were brilliant with the new ball. Cummins looked a proper level down, and then Maxwell ended up bowling loads. He bowled as many overs as Stark. Green got an early bowl himself, and Zampa struggled a bit after Rahul went hard at him. I know they played probably the best team in the tournament on current form, but that doesn't fill me with confidence around Australia.
No, me neither. I didn't like the balance of particularly their batting unit at the start of the tournament, and I sort of like it even less now. You've got the kind of almost like the double anchor at 3 and 4, and then a 5, 6, 7 of Maxwell, Green, Carey, which just feels a bit thin, really. Maxwell, we all know that on his day he's explosive, but I'm not sure if number 5 in a World Cup campaign he's your man, really. It feels like he should be 6. And they're missing a real gun player at 5. Mitch Marsh as an opener as well. They're testing out something pretty new. We obviously saw him hitting the ball incredibly cleanly here this summer, but again, it's quite a big ask against some good new ball bowlers if the ball's doing a bit to rely on a sort of auxiliary makeshift opener. So I think I would make South Africa marginal favourites for this game. Obviously, outstanding batting performance against Sri Lanka, who did rather lose their way at points as well. But that South Africa side is packed full of talent. Again, the balance, Janssen at 7 is potentially a little bit high in the way that we're saying Curran is for England. They've probably got a similar dilemma to deal with. But the point is, if your top 6 comes off like it is against Sri Lanka, it doesn't matter. You've got at 7. So I would say South Africa marginal favourites. And if Australia do lose that, that would be 2 defeats from 2. I think they've got Pakistan the game after that as well. Australia's could be walking a tightrope from very early on in the tournament. It's a huge game. I agree with Phil. India-Australia was one I was really looking forward to. But I did expect India to win that quite comfortably. This one feels not quite a toss of a coin, but a very close game. But I do think South Africa maybe just have the edge.
South Africa are the form team. They are, pound for pound, actually a really, really outrageously strong, muscular batting lineup. All I would say about Australia, and I hear everything you're saying, it's certainly a bit higgledy-piggledy at the moment, but Travis Head is this big loss that they have. And I think...
Do you know what the latest is when they think he'll be back?
I haven't...
Because they could be out of the tournament by the time he's fit again.
I think they'll be thinking, claw their way into the Final Four by hook or by crook, and then address it then. Marcus Stoinis is now fit, so he didn't play in the first game because he has a hamstring kneel, so he was available to bat, obviously, but couldn't bowl. He is now fit for selection. I think he might come in for Green. That's what I'm gathering, or what I've read.
Yeah, potentially Green's not in great nick with the bat, and Stoinis offers more with the ball.
The other thing about Marsh, you're right, makeshift, but he made a 96 in about 10 minutes against India a couple of weeks ago in one of the warm-up games as an opening bat, and he's only faced 5 balls this tournament, so it's definitely not ideal that you have a makeshift opener, but I guess that happens when you lose your really good opener 5 minutes before the start of the tournament. Definitely the lineup against India looked uneven and stodgy in places where it shouldn't be, and unsure in places where it needn't be.
Two sort of broader points in Australia. One, it is interesting that for World Cup in India, they have fewer spinners in the squad than they had for a World Cup in England a few years ago. They had Nathan Lyon in the squad a few years ago. I know obviously it's been complicated because of the injury to Head has meant they've effectively got a 14-man squad at the moment. Agar was injured as well. But it feels like they're not totally prepared for every eventuality in the way that the best teams are. And then also, I don't really know what to make of Pat Cummins' role as a first change bowler who also captains, because as Phil said, Stark and Hazelwood are your 2 gun new ball bowlers, and then because they don't really have a bowling all rounder, really, I guess you can maybe qualify Stark as that, but there's an argument that Sean Abbott wouldn't lose that much from a bowling point of view if Abbott played, but you would significantly strengthen the batting. And Cummins is this guy who's captain, who's not played that much ODI cricket recently, who's also just never really captained white ball cricket, and he's suddenly the main man in the World Cup, but also very much not being the main man as a player. He's a very decent first change ODI bowler, but he's not the supreme force he is in Test cricket.
As he acknowledges himself, he gave an interview to the press, did some media a couple of days ago, and he says the same. He's still finding his feet 12 years on from his debut in ODI cricket. Still doesn't really fully trust himself in that format, which sounds mad, but he says it himself.
It never felt the right fit for him to be white ball captain as well. I think it more came out of a desire to unite Australian cricket at a time when there was quite a lot of fractures within it, and to have one captain who oversaw the whole thing made sense in that sense. I'm not sure it did at the time tactically or strategically, and it feels ever more the case now.
You remember when they won the T20 thing last year? And
2 years ago.
Sorry, 2 years ago. And they did it their own way. They basically picked their test team and won it. And they've kind of done the same thing here. 3 quicks and a spinner, albeit a leggy. Labuschagne and Smith is your test match middle order. Warner's your test match opening bat. There's only really Maxwell in there that doesn't play test match cricket, or doesn't generally play test match cricket. So they've essentially just picked, 6 batters, keeper, three seamers and a spinner. But as I asked Adam Collins this the other day, how Australia going to get on? He sort of shrugged his shoulders and said, "I'd probably win it, mate." And look, I don't know. Perhaps it's some kind of Stockholm syndrome thing, but I'd never bet against them ever.
Well, they'll be right up against it if they lose tomorrow. Other games this week, we've got Bangladesh, New Zealand on Friday. Bangladesh close to must-win territory if they don't win this one, and New Zealand will be 3 from 3 if they win that themselves. And then on Saturday we've got the big one, India Pakistan at the Modi Stadium. That's going to be huge. And then England play Afghanistan at Delhi on Sunday from the first innings of the India-Afghanistan game that's on at the moment. It looks like a pretty flat deck. Interesting to see how Afghanistan spinners go there. Before we go to Butch, Cricket 24 is a culmination of a decade of cricket video game development and includes teams from every corner of the globe. Players will be able to take on major cricket nations, including Australia and England in the Ashes, West Indies, New Zealand, Ireland, and more. Plus, for the first ever time, professional Indian T20 teams, all set in over 50 detailed official stadia. Cricket 24 is the most complete video game simulation in cricket seen to date. The game is out now and you can order it at bigant.com. Let's head to Mark Butcher. He gave us his thoughts on the opening week of the tournament, as well as his views on an interview that Liam Dawson did last week, where he said that he wouldn't necessarily tour India if selected at the start of next year. Mark, we're a week or so into the World Cup. Pretty much everyone had India down as favourites, but I guess New Zealand have been the other really impressive side so far. They obviously demolished not only Netherlands but England in the tournament opener. What have you made of their tournament so far?
Yeah, much as I expected. I sort of go back to the 4 teams that I thought would make the semi-finals. Obviously, India one, England another, New Zealand one more, and Pakistan who've now won 2 from 2, being my 4th. And New Zealand, New Zealand they're a fantastic tournament team for a start. So regardless of the quality, the high quality of the players that they have at their disposal, wicket-taking bowlers, destructive batters. This is all without Kane Williamson, of course. The team could only get stronger at this point. And a sort of a calmness under fire, and an understanding of the way that they play. They kind of they're not trying to be anybody else. They know what they do. They know what their sort of style of cricket is. And they're pretty ruthless in displaying it. So I think they're a terrific side. They've got things like with somebody like Glenn Phillips, who can pick up a couple of wickets, but also is capable of scoring 100 or 40 balls. You've got Mitch Santner, is very, very smart left arm spinner. Henry is fabulous with the new ball. He's so good for Indian conditions as well, because he bowls full enough, and because he's skiddy and not a tall bowler, the ball is always hitting the stumps pretty much, and if he gets a little bit of movement earlier on, he's very, very, very painful to face. They've just got a lot, Trent Bolt's back and looking as good as ever. So they're just a very, very good team. Very solid from 1 to 11. And you would expect them to be there come the shake-up for sure.
They definitely, from the outside at least, seem like one of the more stable teams. They seem to know what they're doing. They're not too much they're panicking over. The new player that's really changed things for them up top is Rachin Ravindra. As a left-hander yourself, what have you made of his World Cup so far?
Yeah, well, I saw him for the first time. New Zealand had a pretty painful 5 ODI tour of Pakistan back in, it would have been March, I guess. March, April, just before our season started. And Rachin was heavily involved in that. And he came out and played some really sort of eye-catching, cameos, batting down at 6, 7, 8. And I guess he's the one he's the one piece of real intrigue, I suppose, from New Zealand's point of view. He kind of goes outside of that. Trusted, tried, excellent performer, steady. He's kind of a bit of an X factor for them. Left arm spin seems to be doing very well in the tournament, which with teams dominated by right-handed batting lineups, you would see that is a good thing. So they've got him as an option there to bowl some of that stuff, which is a little bit hit and miss, I think, but kind of is a handy option to have. And with the bat, oh my God, some of that ball striking. The other day against England was phenomenal. It's just so much talent there. And so they've kind of got somebody who they can kind of send out at any point to do any sort of role, really, and perhaps change a game for them. The fact that he came out and did it at the top of the order against England, it was a terrific bonus, again, in the absence of somebody like Kane Williamson. But you could see him going out anywhere and being able to kind of just freewheel it for a bit while the rest of the guys do their thing around him. So he's a very handy player.
We were saying last week that it felt like a proper old school World Cup moment, like a young player that people, they might have heard of, but not seen that much of, like properly announcing himself on the world stage against the reigning world champions. That was extremely cool. Moving back home, feels like a long time ago, but at the start of last week, Liam Dawson gave an interesting interview where he said that should he be called up for the England Test tour of India, he wouldn't necessarily say yes without thinking about it, partly because he's got other contracts to fulfill around that time of the year. He's already got an SA20 deal worth in the region of £150,000 to £200,000, and he's not centrally contracted, of course, as well. that's potentially quite a big story if Liam Dawson, someone who's not been involved in the England Test setup for quite a long time, who's on the periphery of international cricket, rejects a call up for one of England's biggest Test series. What do you make of all that? Do you have sympathy for Dawson, etc.?
Yeah, I mean it's the perfect convergence of lots of different circumstances. I mean, Dawson's age. How old is he now?
33.
33. So Dawson's age, Dawson's lack of opportunity previously. He's been preferred to other cricketers, and people will have their own, views on as to whether that's been right or wrong over the years. He could perhaps look at the fact that if he'd been given as much developmental time into becoming a sort of a Test match spinner as say Jack Leach has benefited from, then he may well have. He may well be in a very different position than the one that he's in now. And of course, when you have options around you in the South Africa League, I think he's already sort of guaranteed. He's got his contract there, and that is going to be worth more straight off the bat than the England contract, even if he plays all 5 Test matches. And with sort of potential retirement hoving into view, and the idea that you've got a very limited amount of time to look after your family. Once that day comes, all of those circumstances add up to what he's saying, making a lot of sense. To the sort of the diehard England fans and Test cricket fans, it sounds like complete and utter sacrilege. But I think if you put yourself in the player's shoes, you can kind of understand it. And of course, there's no guarantee, having been picked on the tour, that he'd end up playing, which I think it was $12.5 grand or something a Test match. So if he was to play all 5, he'd earn 60 odd grand or whatever it is on top of a tour fee of between 50 and 60. And the South Africa T20 contract is already guaranteed to be almost a third more than him playing every single Test match. And so, you start to put those numbers together, and the opportunity that then perhaps will be there for him for the Pakistan Super League after, straight after that, and a whole winter worth of sort of, filling up the coffers and playing franchise cricket against a maybe of being involved with England, and you begin to understand the standpoint of the player.
And I guess Dawson is someone who's been picked on England tours a lot before without playing that much cricket.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is a glimpse into the future landscape, in that there are only so many players that the ECB can look after financially and almost secure away from franchise leagues. It looks like the ECB have been pretty proactive about that. There have been reports about giving players multi-year essential contracts in the last few weeks. But you can't do that for everyone. Someone like Liam Dawson at the moment, you can argue that he should have played more Test matches in recent years. But fundamentally, they don't see him as their number 1 Test spinner. They don't see him in their first choice ODI squad, first choice T20 squad. There's not that much the ECB can do to financially incentivize him to say no to those leagues.
No, there's not. But there isn't, and also bearing in mind that this is a brand new sort of leadership that's only been, feels like they've been around forever, but they only started at the beginning of 2022. So all of the touring and the not playing and all the rest of it that Liam Dawson had done was kind of on somebody else's watch. And again, I go back to the idea that you could and I would strongly argue that had he been given as much opportunity as some others, then he would be a massive asset to England in all conditions, not just in India. But we are where we are with it, and hence the conversation is ongoing about whether he should be picked and what would happen if he was picked. But look, he's finding himself. He's kind of like the age that he's at the moment. He's played enough. I played against him, for goodness sake. He's enough old school. He's been around for such a long time that he kind of bridges the gap between what will be the conversations and the decisions that the modern players will have to make as a matter of course, and players from a slightly different generation who are just catching the back end of it. And if you're catching the back end of it, having not had the opportunity to earn vast quantities of money throughout most of your career, the idea of getting guaranteed cash at the back end of your career for playing in franchise tournaments, as opposed to, a maybe or a maybe not of playing for England, it becomes even more attractive, doesn't it? It's a different situation if you're talking about somebody who's sort of 24, and who's going to, who has already maybe had a little bit of a taste of franchise cricket and has his name out there in that world. But then the opportunity comes to go and make a name for yourself as a test match player, and then it's like, wow, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that, and the rest of it can wait. But at Liam Dawson's time of life, it's a different conversation to be had, because who knows how, who knows, as an all rounder or whatever, who knows how many years of career he has left in front of him. And does the conversation with wife and kids at home go along the lines of, well, let's make it while we can, while we know we've got it in front of us, because you never know, in a couple of years' time you might have hung your boots up and be looking at starting off a whole new career entirely.
I guess it's quite similar to the Will Smead story from a year or so ago, in that it's a very specific set of circumstances, and also with Dawson, a huge part of this is actually just how well he's done across all formats of the last year or so. He is now someone who gets contracts at pretty much all the leagues other than the IPL.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, from a cricketing perspective, leaving aside the finances and the after cricket life conversation, I would argue that for the last 3 or 4 years, he's not improved massively in the last season to what he has been doing on a regular basis for Hampshire for the last 4 or 5 years. And given the situation that England found themselves in, with Moeen retiring, and and us not having a sort of a real reliable professional spinner, who also bats and fields and does all the other stuff, then I would have argued that the better bet to have taken would have been Liam Dawson 3 or 4 years ago, to plug into as many opportunities in Test match cricket as possible, than it would have been for Jack Leach. Now they went for a different decision, and Jack, I'm definitely not slanging Jack Leach off here, because he's improved out of sight as a bowler, as you'd expect somebody to do, having played as much Test match cricket as him now. And is very, very handy in the role that he is asked to play by Ben Stokes, who has 100% faith in him. So this is not a Dawson is better than Leach conversation. It is simply, given what the two of them have at their disposal in terms of what they bring to an 11. You could very easily make the argument that had Liam Dawson been given the same opportunities as Jack Leach, that he would be, he'd be 100% nailed on to be going on England tours and be playing Test match cricket for England for sure, in all conditions, not just in India.
Well, this could all be academic if he doesn't actually get called up for the India tour, but
well, I mean, he's actually, but having the interview and saying what he said kind of means that he's probably not going to get asked anyway, right? That's true. So we've just wasted 20 minutes of our time.
Anyway, I had fun. Anyway, cheers for your time, Butch. Catch you after the next England game. Cricket is set to be included in the 2028 Olympics in LA, alongside softball, flag football, lacrosse, and squash as the other potential new sports. Joe, it can't really be a bad thing, but looking at some of the details, not really sure what purpose it serves, because it's being reported that it's just going to be a 6-team event for men and women. Do we need another quite small white ball competition?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised at that. That's from the Cricinfo report, saying that that's what the ICC has recommended to the Olympic Committee, that it'll be a 6-team tournament based on the top 6 rankings at a certain date. And I thought the whole idea of this was to kind of broaden the game to reach untapped territories. And I don't see how just having 6 play each other, same usual 6, really does that particularly. Are teams from non-cricket nations going to tune in to watch 2 cricket nations play each other at a game they don't really follow or potentially understand? You're much more likely to tune in if you're, a Nepalese fan and your country are in there, or Hong Kong, or whoever it might be, really, who play a decent level of cricket but haven't really had that exposure regularly. This would feel like a good vehicle for them. And also, I'm not a fan of T10 really, but that felt like quite a good format for this if you're going to try and cram in a lot of games. But this Cricinfo report says that's not really an option because it's not played at international level currently. So it's looking at T20, which again feels, the same 6 teams playing T20s against each other. Doesn't sound like it's going to kind of give the game a shot in the arm, really. I'm not against it, but it doesn't really seem to be doing what I think people hoped it would by getting cricket into the Olympics. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but it doesn't really feel like the much heralded thing that we've been talking about for a while now.
Which Scottish players get in the British team?
Mark Watt's got to be playing, surely.
Your boy?
I don't think. I reckon Mark probably doesn't know that this is on the horizon, but he could be the star man. He could be an Olympic gold medalist. The real question is whether France. They got silver in 1900. The last time cricket was there.
Good knowledge.
They don't get a chance to defend their silver.
That's a disgrace. They should surely be given the chance to defend that. Britain won that game, by the way. Montague Toller took 7 for 9 in the second innings as France were bowled out for 26 in the fourth innings run chase.
Good bowler.
Other news, there was a world record this week, a world record I thought would never be broken. Australian youngster Jake Fraser McGurk whacked the 29 ball 100 in a 50 over game, which is the fastest ever professional 100 full stop, faster than the fastest T20 100 even. Fraser McGurk has been highly rated for a while. He made his professional debuts at 17, Australia under 19 and all that, but has had a quiet couple of years, but clearly a class act. Worth seeking out the highlights for that one.
And a brilliant name.
Brilliant name.
Straight out The Simpsons, Fraser McGurk. It's just a fabulous name.
And in county cricket, Sam Billings and Stephen Mullaney have resigned as the captains of Kent and Notts, respectively. Both teams finished towards the bottom half of Division 1. Kent only just stayed up. Joe, really difficult summer for Billings in 2023. Ended up dropping himself from the side, didn't really get any runs, so not a huge surprise that he's called it quits at the end of the summer.
Yeah, averaged 9 in Championship cricket, I think. Both.
I thought he was meant to be England captain a year or so ago. Must have missed something there.
Both him and Mullaney, I think, have done 6 years in the role. That's a lot. Especially Billings have done all formats. Mullaney's done all formats for a lot of that as well. I think you probably do just reach an expiry date and just need to kind of recharge the batteries as much as anything else. At the start of the summer, we did a captain's round table with 4 county skippers, 2 of which were Mullaney and Billings. I don't know what you're asking them, Phil, but maybe there was a period of self-reflection.
Who are the other 2? Are they going to make it?
Oliveira, so he had a great year.
Oh, nice.
And Jennings, who I'm actually speaking to again on Sunday, so I'll see if I can nudge
Fingers
him.
crossed.
A week after we spoke to them, Keaton Jennings twanged his hamstring, didn't play for 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but Worcester lost all their players as well.
That you can't put that one on me.
But Billing, there's been a bit of a kind of fractious relationship with the Kent supporters in some sections who have questioned his dedication, going off to try and play IPL each year without necessarily playing all that much. Hasn't been around the captain all the time. Joe Denley's filled in at different times. Jack Leaning's done it at the back end of this year and has put his hand up and said he wants to do the job full time. That hasn't been confirmed yet. Billing said, I hope Kent are in a better position than when I took on the role. Undeniably, they are been in the top tier for a little while now. Had some success in the short formats. He's done a really good job, but I think 6 years as a county captain is quite a lot, I think, and probably time to put your feet up.
To finish this bit of the show, we've got the sort of daily episode to come as well. We've got a question from a listener that Phil was moved to tweet about when this came in. So this is from Arjun.
I'd taken a drink. It was on Friday night.
But you still tweet it.
I was feeling, nostalgic and emotional and proud of our listenership.
Quite rightly. But some people are frequent tweeters even when they drink. You're not. So
probably for the best.
Still, it was significant in a way.
I prefer human conversations. Call me old-fashioned.
Arjun asks, I've got a question for you about partisanship. I'm a lifelong cricket fan whose interest in and love for the game has only grown as I have. However, as we approach another World Cup, I've realised that I've never really had a team to support, be that a club, county or nation. And I find myself contending with the possibility that I might be limiting my experience. I know everyone can take pleasure in those gripping contests that can go down to the wire, but I can't help but feel that having a dog in the fight adds another dimension to the event. Hearing you reminisce about classic moments from past tournaments, I remember the thrill of watching many of them live, but without a team I miss out on both the pure elation and crushing devastation. There's a sense that the romanticism is absent without a strong connection to those teams and their histories. I've never felt 30 years of hurt or any other prolonged spell of sporting pain. As journalists who cover every corner of this sport that we love, including teams you may have no affinity with, does it ever feel like you aren't as emotionally invested as you could be? And does that objectiveness ever feel like a hindrance? Does the spectacle alone get anywhere close to the emotional highs and lows that are intertwined with team loyalty? Why did Marx never warn us that solidarity and internationalism could lead to a lack of sporting fulfillment?
He doesn't mean Vic Marx there. I don't think. Different spelling.
Different spelling. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts and all this. Thanks for everything that you guys do. I love the podcast, the magazine, and pretty much everything you put out there. Bring on the World Cup dailies.
Can you respond to that? Yes?
You spent 10 minutes looking up stuff on Marx before we go, where we started.
I tried to do a grammar course on Marx and sport.
You're definitely the one who's going to kick that off.
Well, I might leave the Marx bit for another week.
For next week's show?
Yeah, done. Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
I'll properly formulate.
So Phil's TED talk on Marx and cricket.
Yeah, I'll properly formulate an answer there. This is one of many beautiful emails that we receive. We really are very, very lucky. I can speak from my own perspective. I've got a foot in both camps. I can simultaneously feel that it's slightly odd and slightly against the grain to be particularly partisan about cricket, because cricket to me is the thing. The game itself is the thing, and reducing one's love for it to an allegiance means discarding others or having slightly darker feelings about others. And that kind of attitude to cricket falls quickly into a kind of ugly nationalism and a sort of jingoism as well in certain pockets. And I don't like that anyway, but especially with cricket, because I've always felt that it's this peculiar outpost of cultural life that I care about very deeply, and I want it to replenish itself all the time. So I get down when the West Indies don't play well. I get down when Sri Lanka are struggling, or I genuinely get down when Australia look like they're in the shit. Genuinely, I do, because I want the whole game to be healthy and good. And the spectacle always overrides the result, except in the odd occasion. And this is where I'm saying I'm in both camps here. And so there are certain occasions when the bearer emotions overtake me, and against Australia, the England-Australia thing, because it's so weighted in history, and because I grew up with it and then mythologized it myself as well as the game did, and because there is such a giggle between the two of them, they are two sides of the same coin, whether they like it or not. And so there is a great rattling, fun, rambunctious kind of rivalry there between the two. So yeah, at the end of Old Trafford, famously, I went to watch Oppenheimer to try and make myself feel better. So I don't dispute that is a part of the experience, but for me,
that was as much, right? That was about the spectacle.
That was
because we all wanted a fifth test that really, really meant something, and you also come at it from a point of view of working in it. It's not just about staying objective. It's about wanting to bring people along for the ride, whether they're going on the website or buying the magazine or just being interested in cricket is enough, really.
Yeah.
And that's why certainly, 2019 World Cup final, I was desperate for England to win that game. And that's from someone I've got a Kiwi passport. I support both teams, but that meant so much to English cricket, or it did at the time. I mean, it'd be a different conversation to talk about the legacy of that win, but I wanted and I knew, because it was such an exciting game, my phone was buzzing with people who don't usually follow cricket, who are suddenly into the sport, and that felt like a chance to seize hold of them and keep hold of them. And that feels more important than England winning, but the two definitely go hand in hand.
As a club cricketer, and you are too, Yaz, and Joe's played a lot of club cricket as well in his time, you feel like you are attached to a broader culture. So we're all in our own way hanging on to the tentacles of the culture of English cricket. So I guess there's an affiliation there as well. You know, in the end, you win some, you lose some. And I've seen so many games of cricket that I struggle to get that het up about a result one way or the other. I can get swept along in the narrative and swept along in the theatre of it, massively so. But you do feel, if we're talking, going back to that email, if you're talking about, you know, really feeling a proper affinity, then for me, it's more, I feel an affinity with the culture of English cricket as a tiny, tiny representative of it, as much as the 11 who happen to wear the shirt, or the 22 that wear the shirt across the two genders. I just had one more thing, which is I've just been reminded of it. So the year before I started working in cricket was 2003. And so I was just out of college. And I had a ambivalent relationship with the game, in that I'd come in and out of it. And I always loved it deeply, but, you know, I'd dip in and out. And in the 2003 World Cup in South Africa, and everyone knows the story. Zimbabwe, death of democracy protest by Flower and Alonga resulted in England, Nasser Hussain being put in this awful position of having, on the one hand, the British government leaning on him, demanding that, or imploring him to refuse to play as a political statement, and then the ICC on the other shoulder saying, well, if you do that, then we're going to nail you. And he was in this terrible scenario, Nasser. And in the end, he showed more leadership than any politician out there, and more spine than the ICC. And he did a midnight press conference. And I couldn't have been prouder of him as a representative of the English game. And I couldn't have been prouder in that moment of the England cricket team, who were a bunch of young kids. Anderson was in there being forced to confront these kinds of mad diplomatic political decisions. Hussain was majestic and magnificent in the shadow of, obviously, the giants of that story in Alonga and Flower. And then, a week or so later, after they'd forfeited the game against Zimbabwe, and so straight away you lose the points. So then they play Australia at Durban. And they have to win that game to get through, just to get through to the next bit, like the Super Sixes or whatever it would have been. And they play out of their boots, and they play desperate cricket, and they play heart on the sleeve cricket. And as I say, I had no dog in the fight, aside I was just a fan. And I was so emotionally invested in that game because it had a very clear moral, ethical element to it as well as the connection that I'd had as a cricket lover and watching Nasser at Chelmsford as an Essex fan and all the rest of it. And then they played really good stuff against Australia. Andy Bickle takes 7 for 20. Then they get them 50 for 4 or 5, Joe, something like that. And then 130 for 8, I think they were. Australia were chasing England's 200.
Vaughan dropped an absolute sitter, didn't he?
Vaughan dropped a sitter. Bevan's not out constantly, perpetually not out at the other end. Bickle comes in, whacks 30 odd. They win the game in the final over but for 8 wickets down. And England are out. And I'll never forget the feeling of emptiness at the end of that game. And I'd gone to a golf driving range. I remember at the time because I just couldn't cope with the pressure of it. And I was listening to it on the radio, you know, because I couldn't watch it because it was just too sad. It was too sad. And I guess that's a sort of sprawling, pointless story about affinity. There needs to be another layer to it. There needs to be another layer of narrative and theatre to it for me to really... to get the juices properly flowing, I suppose. But I'll never forget that experience. And that comes from, obviously, an allegiance to English cricket and to, at that point in particular, the England cricket team.
I guess my answer is probably more similar to Joe's in that I always have like an insecurity about the sport's popularity. So my first desire is, I know, yeah, we all do. My first desire is always what is going to make cricket bigger and have a long-lasting impact on potentially new fans, etc. But there are the odd moment that usurps that in terms of my own personal feelings. So I think the most I've ever wanted a team to win a cricket match is probably Scotland-England in that game 5 years ago, because similar to what you were saying, actually, in terms of the culture around cricket. So I went to university in Scotland, and I didn't know any of the Scottish team personally, but loads of my mates did. Loads of my mates played for the same cricket club as guys who were literally in the Scotland team, and you sort of knew, how little money there was around in Scottish cricket and what a big deal it would be if Scotland could get over the line.
Yeah.
I really wanted them to win that game because I knew what it would do for those individuals involved who are only, a couple of people away from myself, I guess. With England, okay, obviously the Ashes I really, really care about. But, in this World Cup, my housemate actually asked me after the England-New Zealand game, "Oh, you must be gutted." I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm really not." Like, that was amazing. I think maybe because growing up, England were rubbish in World Cup. So my enjoyment of a World Cup couldn't have been based on how well are England going to do. But I've always seen World Cups, the 50-over ones at least, as just a sort of celebration of the world game. And I think seeing Ravindra do what he did, Kusal Mendes do what he did, that kind of thing is what World Cups are about for me. Like, players you don't always see on the big stage getting to enjoy the big stage and show how good they are on the big stage, with actually where in where the game is at the moment, even with all the leagues and all that, players from nations like Sri Lanka probably get few opportunities to show just how good they are on the bigger stage. So I still feel that is really important. But I mean,
the Scotland thing, when the West Indies play test matches in England, I want the West Indies to win the game, sincerely, genuinely, from in my heart. And the run chase at Headingley, the Shea Hope run chase, I was desperate for them to get home because there's just so much more on it for them. There's so much more jeopardy at play. They're playing for the future of the game in that region. We're just playing because it's fun, right? So yeah, my allegiance can certainly flip-flop depending on the opposition. And again, because the broader picture is the game. And as you say, the kind of existential threat that hovers over it all the time. Just one last thing on the email. The idea of having more of an attachment to certain players because of your history of affinity. I don't think that really applies so much when you think about it historically, right? There's as much love for Aravinda de Silva or Martin Crowe as there is for, I don't know, Michael Vaughan or whoever it might be, right?
Absolutely.
And when we talk about
if not
it,
more so, because there's almost a kind of sense of mystique around some of those names as well. Whereas, I loved watching Alex Stewart when I grew up, but I wouldn't say he's one of my favourite cricketers of all time.
There's not much mystique around that.
There's not much mystique around Alex Stewart.
Get on it, run him out. And so whichever badge they might have been wearing ceases to be that relevant.
Yeah.
Apart from the Australia thing.
Yeah.
Apart from the Australia
this
thing.
is it.
And I think that's partly why we enjoyed the Ashes, because
Ponting?
At the time, I mean,
At the time, sure, but with time, that's what I'm saying.
No, but no, for me, the Ashes and any game against Australia, men's or women's, I really, really want England to win at like quite a deep level. I remember, day 2 at Lords, for example, when England kept getting caught playing the hook shot, I was actually angry.
Yeah.
I remember you on the other side of the press box. I walked over to you and said, like, that was shit, wasn't it?
And you see it across the press box, both sides. You do not have to scratch too far beneath the surface to see that real partisanship. There's the snarky tweets going backwards and forwards from Aussie and English commentators,
which doesn't exist
pundits.
at least from an English perspective, doesn't exist with any other opposition.
No, there are sometimes hints of it with India, but
yes, that's true.
In a different kind of way.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Also, when I was growing up, my favourite batter was Mark Waugh. And I always wanted to get runs against England, even though it was a psychodrama taking place every week with the England Test match team.
But that was almost rooting for the underdog in the Australian batting lineup. Possibly. So good was that batting lineup, right?
Possibly, yeah. But it taps into the individualism within the team sport that you can follow. And I think you're seeing this more and more actually in modern cricket, especially now with more focus on non-international cricket. People are following individuals. They're following icons rather than teams. And the notion of allegiance and affinity becomes more stratified as players become less attached to one particular creed, and so you follow their stories rather than the stories of the teams that they play for. If
listeners think we've been overly romantic at all in the last 10 minutes, it's because the backdrop to this conversation is Rohit Sharma is currently 76 or 43, and he's playing the most dreamy innings in the world.
On that, newsflash, 553 sixes hit by Rohit Sharma in all formats in international cricket International cricket? Might be in all cricket. Probably in all cricket. Got to be in all cricket.
No idea.
Yeah, it came up equaling Chris Gale. So he's
wow.
now, in fact, he might have gone past it in the last 10 minutes. I haven't been watching.
Amazing.
He's now the joint highest six hitter in cricket history. And probably already done it.
Thanks for that email, Arjun. That was an absolute belter. And remember, you can always get in touch at podcast@wisden.com. And that is all for this bit of the podcast. So cheers, Phil. Cheers, Joe. Next up, Abhishek and I will chat through the India-Afghanistan game. Ready to get the game on, rain or shine? Total Play has your back with their game-changing cricket pitch covers. Their covers are designed by ground staff for ground staff, the experts who know the turf inside out, and they've got solutions for all budgets. Check out the revolutionary climate cover system, the only truly breathable flat sheet cover on the market. It's trusted by everyone from grassroots clubs to test match grounds. And if you're looking for pound value, our rain cover is your winning bet. Don't let weather stop play. Contact the cricket pitch experts today. Visit totalplay.co.uk to learn more. Total Play, because cricket's not just a game, it's a way of life. Abhishek Mukherjee joins us from India as India went 2 from 2 with a comprehensive win over Afghanistan on a true Delhi pitch, Virat Kohli's home ground. India restricted Afghanistan to 272, a target they reached in exactly 35 overs. Rohit Sharma scored 131 off just 84 balls in a breathtaking innings up top. Abhishek, we'll get to India in a bit, but what did you make of Afghanistan's approach in the game? Quite cautious with the bat on a really good pitch, potentially an acknowledgement of their limitations, but then holding Rashid Khan back to the 14th over when the game was pretty much done because of how fast Rohit was at the start. I know they were always underdogs, but they didn't really give themselves much of a chance in this one.
We saw this was a pitch where South Africa scored over 400 runs and Sri Lanka would probably have chased had they scored 50-60 runs fewer. So on this kind of pitch, expected Afghanistan to come harder at India, especially during that long partnership. It was a long partnership between Shahidi and Omarzai, but they never tried to accelerate. But what was more baffling was holding Rashid Khan back until a point where India could, until it reached a point where if India had wickets in hand, they would have chased it down. So the only way Afghanistan could have defended this was by taking early wickets. They were not very likely to get a run through India on this surface, but they did not even try early on.
Jasprit Bumrah was brilliant for India. He's been out of the game for ages. Now he's back. Do you think he's close to his best? He took 4 for 30 odd.
What impressed me most about Bumrah was getting swing in the Asia Cup. More swing than probably what he used to. But he was getting swing. Today, within a couple of overs, he realized that there was no swing. So he quickly changed his length. He started bowling slightly shorter. He hit the deck and got a wicket that way. Because the first wicket he got was Ibrahim Zadran. Zadran didn't drive away from the body. He just prodded at it. But the ball was just not full enough for him to play that shot, and that got the edge. And you noticed how, Bumrah changed his length, out-thought Zadran, and he gestured accordingly.
Do you think he's close to his best then?
Yes. The only worry cricket fans ever have about Bumrah is injuries. If he stays fit, he's there. I think if India reach a place where they would qualify with a couple of matches in hand, India may rest Bumrah towards the end.
You obviously watch a lot of Bumrah. When he's on song, is he the best 50-over bowler in the world for you?
Yes. The one thing, I think I have been following cricketers, the one thing that makes Bumrah special is there are fast bowlers, there are bowlers who bowl Yorkers, there are bowlers who can change pace, but you don't get someone who releases the ball from that angle. You don't get to face a bowler like that in the nets. So he releases it from within the vertical. It's an unusual angle.
We've been talking about how strong India look for weeks, but if non-India fans are looking for hope, can it be found in how the rest of the India attack bowled today?
Siraj, just 2 matches ago, Siraj basically blew away Sri Lanka. So we can, against Australia, he was reasonably good. Though today he just was not himself. It can be just one bad day. Hardik took 2 vital wickets. Kuldeep, I would say, was reasonable, but not at his best. Shardul did a Shardul thing, got a wicket out of nowhere. And Jadeja was, as usual, economical. On a flat pitch, he went for under 5 runs and over. So it was not a great bowling performance. It was a competent bowling performance. Okay, decent, I would say, on a flat pitch. But they have to do better against stronger batting lineups. Against England or Australia, they need to do better. Against South Africa, especially, that explosive batting lineup, the bowlers need to do better.
Bumrah aside, what do you think the others need to be doing better?
You can try being Bumrah, but no. Apart from that, Siraj has come up really well, and he knows that if he bowls, if he even Shardul knows that. We saw that Ashwin bowled reasonably well against Australia, but just a change of combination meant that he was out. So Shardul and Siraj, if Siraj suddenly loses form, I'm not saying he did, but if he loses form, he knows that Shami is waiting. So they are always on their toes. They have to be.
Rohit broke a few records today. Most World Cup 100s, 7 in just 19 games. The previous record was Sachin Tendulkar with 6 from 45 games. He's got the most sixes in international cricket. He's overtaken Chris Gale. 555 sixes in international cricket. He was absolutely sensational today. Has he changed his approach up top? He seems more attacking than he used to be, almost following the 2019 England model in just the new ball is the most dangerous time to be an opening batter, but it's also the time where you can make hay against that hard ball that flies away to the boundary.
4 years ago in England, Rohit Dhawan was the one originally it was always Dhawan who took the initial charge. With Rohit, it was inevitably, as the innings went on, he accelerated at a rapid rate. But now Rohit has, over the past couple of years, that approach has changed, which is why his average has come down a bit, but the strike rate has gone significantly higher. So with Gill in the side, Gill now focuses on that long innings. Here, Gill also takes early chances, but Rohit is the one who takes more chances early on. And today, basically everything came off. Today, there was no stopping him.
When he's on song, there are very few players like him in the world, and I feel like people were quite quick to say he might not be in his best form a few months ago, but actually there wasn't enough appreciation for what he's trying to do. He's trying to do something that he hadn't previously done before, and there are always going to be a few low scores when you're going to be the guy who takes those risks.
Yes, basically, Gill is capable of taking it deep. Kohli, we know he can bat until the 50th over. Even Iyer is very good in the middle overs. So Rahul has come up. So Rahul has done reasonably well at 4 and 5. So if there are 4 solid batters to follow, Rohit can take all the risk he wants to, because he knows there is enough cushion. Someone has to take the risks early on in the power play with the field up.
Well, it's certainly one of the most aesthetically pleasing top orders in the world. Well, that's everything for today. Thanks, Abhishek, and thanks so much, everyone, for listening. We'll be back for our daily podcast tomorrow after Australia take on South Africa at Look Now.